I feel like I'm cheating. Seriously. I always say that I try not to be the dude that hypothesizes stuff for my favorite teams to go out there and do, but when somebody else goes out there and says it, it gives us the validation to make a video about it because, hey, some of y'all will hit me up saying, hey, I saw this idea, somebody was talking about it online, somebody spoke about it on the radio, somebody made a piece about it, or they wrote about it, or they spat off about it. What are your thoughts? And that is the point of this YouTube channel. To leave no stone unturned, to dive into all the possibilities, and to talk about the scenarios. So, let's head back over onto dailyhive.com on a piece published on July 25th, 2025 by Trevor Beggs. 9 young players with big potential that the Vancouver Canucks could target in a trade. Now, big potential indeed. We have already made our fair share of commentaries talking about this dude in Anaheim, Mason McTavish. But if you scroll down and go by the number 1 Anaheim Ducks trade chip at the moment, you will see a conversation on 2 guys that I am very familiar with. Take a look at this. Alex Newhook or Kirby Dach from the Montreal Canadiens. Beggs writes here in the article, the Habs have completely rebuilt their team since their Stanley Cup final loss in 2021. However, 2 players who could be looking for fresh starts may be Alex Newhook and Kirby Dach. Both can play center and be physical, but both have taken a step back with the Habs. With Ivan Demidov now in Montreal, along with the acquisition of Zach Bolduc, it's conceivable that Newhook or Dach could be dealt. Ah, yes. Conceivable. Inconceivable. Okay, I gotta get the Princess Bride out of my gosh darn brain. But Alex Newhook or Kirby Dach are indeed listed as potential trade options here for the Vancouver Canucks. And I just gotta say, as much as I appreciate what it was that Kent Hughes did to bring in a certain type of guy, a certain type of age demographic to the Montreal Canadiens, I think at some point you're going to have to start realizing that maybe that wasn't the best choice at the time. Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook are both Montreal Canadiens guys that do have value. And they are relatively young. I mean, Newhook, 24, Kirby Dach, 24. These guys actually, Kirby Dach, January 21, Newhook, January 28. These guys are a week apart in terms of their age. But they both have gone through some serious hurdles developing in the National Hockey League that I honestly am not 100% confident that a Dach or a Newhook would be a significant upgrade over a guy like Filip Chytil, for example. Like, Filip Chytil is the penciled-in second-line center for the Vancouver Canucks right now, and honestly, the only real hiccup with him is the fact that he gets hurt all the time. He's a good player, and maybe even somebody that I think deserves a second-line chance full-time, but he just can't stay healthy. And you can say the same thing about Kirby Dach, unfortunately. Taken 3rd overall by Chicago back in 2019, I think a lot of Canadiens fans are sort of coming around to the idea that maybe Dach wasn't the best acquisition the Habs could have made. Montreal ultimately traded away Alexander Romanov for the first-round pick that they used to trade for Dach, so that's the trade tree that went down. You have to wonder maybe if the Canadiens just traded for another player, or if they used the pick themselves, where would everything be in 2025? But Kirby Dach went through some very unfortunate development years in Chicago. His first year with the Hawks was pretty good, 23 points in 64 games, but the year after, he ended up getting injured at the World Juniors, and this was the weird year where the World Juniors was like the opening part of the year because it was COVID and there was a shutdown and everything, and Dach got injured in the preliminary game. That's why as the captain of Team Canada, he had 0 games played and 0 points. Upon returning to Chicago, though, he had 10 points in 18 games, which was pretty good, but then he dipped to 26 points in 70 games the next year. Add to that the trade to Montreal. He ends up getting 38 points in 58 games in his first season with the Habs, but then gets injured again and misses the majority of the 23-24 campaign, only playing 2 games in that whole sample. Dach then got injured again in 24-25, had 22 points in 57 games. This guy is not looking like the healthiest of the crop, and at this point, you're really starting to question whether or not he has had the proper time to marinate and grow his game at the NHL level. There was a period where Kirby Dach was seen as potentially the next Ryan Getzlaf. Big guy, right-handed dude with some very good playmaking and passing skills. He doesn't really play like a brute. Like, he's 6'4", yes, but he's not going to go out there and absolutely pulverize guys into the boards. Sure, he can play physical and he can stand up for himself, but that's not really his go-to. There was a lot of playmaking potential out of Dach in the Saskatoon Blade system in the WHL. It's why he was taken 3rd overall by Chicago, even though a lot of folks, myself included, thought that Chicago would go with Turcotte, because Turcotte was a local guy. He's from Illinois, and he was also projected to go near the top of the draft as a top NTDP center, but Dach went 3rd instead. Turcotte then went over to LA, and now we've seen how his career has gone. He's also been hurt by injuries a lot. So for Vancouver, I just don't think Kirby Dach is a reasonable ask, because he's a guy that's been so vulnerable in the same way Filipino has, that you're just kind of doubling up on that kind of problem if you trade for this guy. Now, for Alex Newhook, he has been a lot healthier than Kirby Dach the past few years. 71 games with Colorado in 22-23. In 22, he had 82 games in 23. Then he played 55 games with the Canadiens the year after, which was a little bit less, but then he had an 82-game season this most recent year with 15 goals and 11 assists. Unfortunately for Newhook, I just don't think he's good enough to be a full-time second-line guy in Vancouver, especially where he would have to be lining up behind Elias Pettersson, and he would have to essentially be the replacement for JT Miller. Not to say that anybody really is capable of becoming JT Miller 2.0 and fully taking over that role, but for Alex Newhook, I mean, this is a guy who would have to fill in some serious shoes for Vancouver should he be a Canucks trade target. He was getting 15, 16 minutes per night here for Montreal, which is not great, and his production wasn't fantastic either. 15 goals is not bad, but 26 points. You would expect more out of a guy that you would thrust into a second-line role if you're Patrick Allvin and the Vancouver Canucks. So ultimately, while I understand the vision here that Beggs is bringing when talking about young players with potential the Canucks could target in a trade, yeah, it's true. I'd say that Dach and Newhook both had a lot of potential heading into the 2019 draft and projecting into the long term. Dach was supposed to be a guy who could be a number 1 center, an 80-point-per-season guy with Ryan Getzlaf-like playmaking qualities. And Alex Newhook was seen as a potential poor man's Jack Hughes, a poor man's Connor McDavid, or a poor man's Nathan MacKinnon, because in Alex Newhook's draft-eligible year with the Grizzlies, this guy could gallop down the ice like Connor McDavid and just score points at will in the BCHL. Now, you can say that the BCHL is lower-level hockey, and that's why his production was so high. Fair point. But it remains to be said here that Alex Newhook, the way he controlled the game was similar to those speedsters who really excel when the puck is on their stick, who play a very good possession-based game, and who can just convert from rotating around in the O-zone. Like the Jack Hugheses, like the McKinnons, like the McDavids. It's like what we said all the way back in 2019. Newhook was a poor man's version of them. But now, I think he's really not been able to establish that same level of confidence at the NHL level, nor the skill to be able to maneuver around the O-zone with that same finesse and puck control that he had when he was an eligible prospect. So Newhook, I do think there's a lot of potential, so too with Kirby Dach. I just don't think the likelihood of that potential ever fulfilling itself is all too there anymore, which is why I don't think the Canucks should go out there and target Dach and Newhook. But if you disagree, if you think these guys would be good, then you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on Trevor Begg's article? It will be linked in the description. What are your thoughts on Newhook and Dach as Canucks targets? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.